Welcome back to Simple Truth. Hey, I want to finish up part 2 of Death of a Dream, right? And we're in the story of Joseph, and we're in Genesis chapter 37. I want to pick up, we left off with Reuben coming up with a plan, right, to save his brother, but his brothers thwarting that plan. So the original plan was to kill Joseph. Then the plan was to throw him in a cistern and just kind of leave him for wild animals to get. And now we see a caravan of traders, right, that is coming by. Now the idea is like, hey, why do we need to get our hands dirty? Why don't we just sell him? So pick it up there with me, right? It says in verse 27, come now, right? Let us sell him to the Ishmaelites and not let our hand be upon him, for he is a brother in our own flesh. Isn't that amazing? All of a sudden, a conscience happens. All of a sudden, we have this compassion. Like, well, wait, he's our brother. We shouldn't kill him. Let's sell him. Isn't it funny, the things that make sense in these moments, right? Hatred makes things make sense that make no sense, right? All of a sudden, it's, hey, somehow I'm having compassion because we're not killing him. Well, let's just sell him, which ends up with the same thing. He's gone. I see, it's the opposite of love. We hear a lot of times within Christianity this idea that sometimes, loving people means you just can't be around them. Sometimes we just sell them off, right? We get rid of them. It accomplishes the same purpose. Somehow we've twisted that to make some sense, right? I'm not killing the relationship. I just can't have a relationship with them right now. And then we put all of that blame upon the other person and say, hey, listen, it's this other person's fault, right? They've made it so that I can't be in relationship with them. It doesn't matter if you kill somebody or you sell them off. If there's no potential for a relationship with them, you accomplish the same thing. We just feel better about it. Right now, I don't have to work on the relationship because they're gone. Right, so just move away. We do that. People fall in our churches, and what do? We move them on to the next church. Right, and we don't feel bad about the fact that like we've had to discipline them or take care of them or any of that stuff. We moved them on. Right? We don't have to see it. We don't have to deal with it. We prefer that our problems just kind of go away, right? Not that we work through them, right? So again, hatred has us doing things that make sense to us. Let's not kill him. That's good. That's being compassionate. Let's just sell him off. So it says this, then the Midianite traders passed by. They drew Joseph up, lifted him out of the pit, sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver. They took Joseph to the Egypt. This story sounds really similar in nature, right? We get this same story with Judas, right? He betrayed Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. This is 20 pieces of silver, right? This idea that Judas, right, wasn't going to do the dirty work himself. He couldn't kill Jesus out of his disappointment. He was just going to have somebody else do it. He was selling Jesus out. Right? We're really good at this. Right? We come up with creative ways to sell people out for 20 pieces of silver. I'm guessing that you've done it just like I've done it. We've sold people out in church. We've sold people out in our workplaces, in our families, right? We've said, listen, I don't want to deal with this problem anymore. So, hey, give me 20 pieces of silver and we'll just push it away. We'll push it off to the side. There's a problem with this, though, right? That they're thinking that they're getting rid of their problem. The problem with thinking like that is God has this tendency of bringing things full circle back around. We think that we're avoiding the problem. We think that we're getting rid of it. And God, he just has a way of just bringing that back. Now, it's going to be a long process for Joseph and for his brothers. But God's going to take these ugly moments. He's going to make beautiful things out of them. But normally, that has to do with you and I taking some ownership, some responsibility, and finally dealing with the thing that we've passed on, right? So again, you might have days, years, but you're still going to have to deal with it at some point. Goes on, it says, when Reuben returned to the pit, saw that Joseph was not in the pit, he tore his clothes and returned to his brothers and said, the boy is gone, and where shall I go? And they took Joseph's robe, slaughtered a goat, dipped the robe in blood. Then they sent the robe of many colors and brought it to their father, right? And said, this we have found. Please identify whether it is your son's robe or not. So they're now stuck because the plan was originally, let's kill Joseph. Then it's, no, let's put him in a cistern and Reuben's going to come back and save him. And then Joseph's going to be okay, right? Then it's, nope, let's sell him. And now Reuben comes back and all of a sudden realizes that because he didn't make a stand, he just manipulated things. All of a sudden his plan is now foiled. Now all of a sudden there is no brother to get out of the pit, so he tears his robes, right? Usually tearing of the robes, some ashes on your forehead, right? All of a sudden you are repentant in nature. You get it. You get what has happened here, right? So Reuben gets the severity of this and says, wait a second, what are we going to tell our father? Finally, some real compassion comes out. It's not about them, not about Joseph. Now it's about their father, and Reuben's like, what are we going to tell him? Like, how are we going to handle this? Are we just, hey, we just sold your brother. So again, the problem with hatred is it often is teamed up with lying, right? We cover to cover to cover to cover. Now all of a sudden, they're having to lie, manipulate to cover what they've done. At any moment, responsibility for hatred, jealousy, discord could have come, right? Could have come from Jacob, could have come from Joseph, could have came from his brothers. Somebody could have done something, realized the intensity of this, and tried to work it out. But instead, look at the damage that this hatred is doing. It's why we don't carry it around, because it's gone from this to this to this to this. Right? So now all of a sudden, they come up with a brilliant plan. Hey, let's just pretend like he's been killed by a wild animal. So we do that, right? We pretend that he's been killed by a wild animal. And then we send it to his father. And notice again the lie that comes upon the lie. The original lie, is for like, hey, he's been killed by a wild animal. Now they send it to him and they say, hey, Dad, do you recognize this coat of many colors? As if they didn't recognize it and know whose it was, right? So their plan is, hey, we've gotten rid of our brother. We're going to announce to our father that he was killed by wild animals. Notice this. His response, Jacob's, is, it's my son's robe. A fierce animal has devoured him. Joseph is without doubt torn to pieces. Then Jacob tore his garments, put sackcloth on his loins, and mourned his son for many days. All of his sons, his daughters, rose up to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted and said, no, I shall go down to Sheol to my son, mourning. Thus his father wept for him. Meanwhile, the Midianites had sold him into Egypt to Potiphar, the officer of the Pharaoh, captain's guard. Let me make this clear. These guys manipulated a story. They developed a plan, and they put their father into mourning. They watched a man, their father, right, that they were jealous for. They watched him mourn and not be able to be comforted, all over a lie. At any time, they could have stepped forward and given the truth. At any time, they could have gotten their father out of this. But instead, they decided to go with the lie. Like hatred does this type of thing. Irrational hatred has you looking at other people, the pain that you're causing them, right? The hurt that you're causing them. Sometimes physical in nature. We're watching people be sick. We're watching them be tormented mentally, emotionally. We're watching all this stuff, and hatred somehow has you rationalizing that it's all okay, that it's worth it. Your dislike for someone or for a situation makes whatever happens okay. And they had the power to stop this at any time, but they chose not to do that. Let me challenge you with this. What situations are you going through? What moments of hatred, frustration, or anger have you so wrapped up that you're doing completely irrational things, that you're allowing people around you to get hurt, you're allowing them to be mentally frustrated, to be physically frustrated, while you selfishly hang on to something that has no good in it? Right? You have the ability to stop. You have the ability to go to work, admit something to your boss, to go to church and say, hey, I've been struggling with this, to go to your spouse and say, hey, I've been struggling with this. You have the ability to go to your kids and anyone else and ask for forgiveness and say, listen, I know you guys are all thinking this, but this is what it is. You have the ability to stop this. But taking you back to the beginning of last time, this is all about killing a dream. right? The brothers looked at each other and said, now let's see if these dreams can be fulfilled. This was all about irrational hatred towards a dream. They perceived, right, something, and they wanted to stop it at any cost. How crazy is that? There are people who perceive stuff all around us, and they're just out to stop it no matter what the cost to anybody around them. They perceive somebody's going to get a position, or somebody's going to get value here, or somebody's going to get a friendship, or going to get finances. They perceive somebody's going to get something, and an irrational hatred has them doing stuff that destroys everybody around them because they're so concerned with that so-and-so doesn't get this position, this job, this item. They don't get this relationship, right? And it becomes irrational. So I want you to take that. I want you to think about your own life and think about it. Are there ways that you're doing this? Oh, probably yours are a lot more sophisticated, right? You're not going to throw somebody in a pit, right? You're not going to sell them into slavery. But like I said at the very beginning, sometimes we sell people into slavery. We put them into a life of forever having to pay off a debt, forever having to pay off something that they did to harm us. Right? And we rationalize that because we say, hey, listen, sometimes loving people means you just can't be in relationship with them. So I'm never going to restore this because, oh, hey, that's the way it works. Right? So listen, we're going to continue on with this. We're going to move on into Genesis chapter 39 next time, talk some more about Joseph, be able to pull out some more simple truths. So we'll see you next time for Simple Truth.